people think, oh, hip hop, and they think a certain demographic, a certain age group. And a big part of what we want to bring to the table is, no, this is applicable across the life course. And while we are entering the conversation through the lens of hip hop culture, many of these things are broadly applicable across different types of creative arts, different types of music genres. And we'll be able to talk a little bit about that and look at those kind of points of synergy in other areas. But those are really, really big points. And it is something that multiple disciplines and professions can use in their, whatever their professional, domains of influence are, because we recognize that even, when people are needing help, they're not necessarily going to go to a professional to deal with these things. And part of what we want to help people understand is that you can promote self-care through your profession. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be someone coming into your office to do counseling. You can still promote some of these concepts and ideas through the idea of self-care and more universal prevention, where it's not necessarily a diagnosis-based attempt to be trauma-informed and to, promote a lot of these things through the arts. So that's a big part of what we are excited to bring to the table in the discussion.
And that's a beautiful point, what you were just saying about the self-care piece, because the beauty of a lot of what I think this work does is it allows individuals to develop a relationship with hip hop, right? Even if they're embedded in the culture generally, provides certain skill sets, whether it's rhyme writing or rapping or recording, that is then transferable when they're outside of treatment. They're gone, you know what I mean? There might be a certain crisis that comes up and they don't have the therapist on speed dial, and in the moment they've kind of developed these coping skills through the art and are able to act upon it in a way that is self-healing. And I think that that's something that you highlight that is tremendously important, because we're not always going to be there. Therapy isn't necessarily lifelong, there's termination, it might come to a conclusion, but if individuals can kind of take that relationship that they've developed further in the therapeutic exchange and utilize that to continue to work through processes, process traumas that are going to continue to happen. It's not like the world stops spinning and everything's great after therapy. They can continue to have that therapeutic relationship with the culture itself.
And that's really, really everything coming full circle, right? The whole premise of hip hop culture within therapeutic spaces is the acknowledgement and recognition that people used hip hop therapeutically for themselves. So it was organically healing. It's come into professional circles, because of connecting the dots. But really, we're in many ways, it's kind of regifting, but helping professionals that may not be of the culture or have been familiar with the culture, broadening awareness of the healing elements of the culture and trying to really be crystal clear about where trauma enters the conversation. Another big piece is, a lot of the conversations about being trauma informed in dealing with trauma therapeutically are at the individual level and kind of remain there, right? How do we help individuals work with whatever is going on for them, with less attention to the environments that may be trauma inducing? And, a part of promoting well-being is promoting individual well-being, but also community well-being. And sometimes being able to articulate those environments that are trauma inducing and validating that these are real, societal. It's not just maybe an individual that caused a traumatic experience. Maybe some of their broader lived experiences are trauma inducing. And so, conversations about equity and justice in inhibiting those trauma inducing environments can be therapeutic as well as thinking about ways to kind of ameliorate those things and make those conditions better.
I think what's interesting about this topic, I think, and I'm thinking about all the presenters that will be involved in the conference, but this one hits those 4 key elements that we've designed for this theme: the rhythm, the balance, the regulation, and Raphael just said about kind of the community. So the connection piece, how do we connect people? And also that whole idea of, yes, this is one of those kinds of approaches that came from something out of culture, which, a lot of times people talk about trauma-informed, but they don't resonate the cultural piece. I think we do badly with that one, and we have a lot to look for in that element. But this in particular has all those dimensions. That's what I find fascinating about it. And here I'm somebody really from outside of that culture. I'm somebody who listens to all kinds of music. I will say that. But to see this, JC and I were having a conversation on social media about the difference between this and in a sense of if you created rock and roll therapy, I don't think it would do the same thing, because the foundations in hip hop that I'm perceiving have such strong foundations in the basic thing, which is rhythm, but it moves up through all these other dimensions. It moves up through feeling and emotion and then articulates it through really powerful lyric writing. I just can't think of anything, that's so profound and connects so many dimensions.
What's great about that, and I think will be a great feature of our presentations, is using lyric writing on both sides, right? Recognizing the extraordinary amount of powerful lyrics that are already existent in the culture that we can draw from and build upon and create activities around, and all these insight-oriented things that can be generated from that. But then what JC will also display is the powerful idea of creating, using lyrics in an expressive capacity to provide your voice, whether it's about yourself or the world you're living in, whatever it is. So we get to really see both sides.
What is unique about hip hop, and Kathy, you were just saying that might kind of stretch further than like rock and roll therapy. There's something about the culture, and I would say its origins in systemic oppression, and it's the way it's been fighting, for social justice in particular. I think that makes it very unique, and particularly in the realm of community building, like you were saying, and connection, because trauma rarely exists in a bubble. It's rarely like just happens one and done. Even interpersonal traumas, there's always much larger systems at play. And, what Rap was saying about trauma-inducing environments, I really like that phrase. I think that's very well put, because there are environments set up to perpetuate trauma. So even when individuals are going home and leaving the session, or, they're returning right back to the same situation. And hip hop from the beginning has always been about calling into question these larger societal structures. And that's what I believe we need to be doing, and part of what social work is really about, and trying to impact and create change beyond the individual level, on a communal level, but also on a policy level, where you're getting, you're kind of getting more towards the macro structures. And I think that's a crucial point. So I appreciate you both highlighting that.
I don't know why this came up for me, but I was just thinking about different kinds of, forms of music. And one that popped in my head was classical music. And it certainly does a lot of the same things. But when you spoke about the social justice and the connection and community that comes from that, yeah, if we all attend a performance together, we all start to co-regulate, we enjoy whatever music it is that's going on. But I don't know of any classical music that actually brings up a social justice issue for me. So that's where, there are so many other pieces to this that I think it's really worth therapists thinking about this and experiencing it themselves, the way, you two will present some ways that they can be interactive in this session. And, I having worked with JC, we saw that in working with people that people were quite surprised at what they experienced. They had no idea when they just did some simple things that you introduced.
And this is the will kind of features one lens of the culture or a few lenses of the culture, but part of what we'll try to also do is let people know of the other things that are possible, because there's lots of people out there doing great work, whether it's through beat making or dance or those other things. So we'll kind of touch on that a little bit so people know that there's really a whole universe out there with hip hop culture that people can work within if maybe there are certain areas that they're more interested in or comfortable with. So that'll be a big part, as well as recognizing that it's a global culture now. While it originated in the United States, in a certain region of the United States, some of the underlying principles of empowerment and identity and, resilience and, the equity and justice issues that JC was talking about, those resonate everywhere because you have communities and individuals that are dealing with those same traumas and personal challenges and community challenges. So we'll touch on that as well.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think that speaks to the universality of it. And just from an intersectional lens, the webs of oppression, even if individuals in different parts of the world haven't experienced the exact experience that birthed hip hop culture, they might have experienced, totalitarian regimes and been oppressed in other ways. And I think that's a big part of why hip hop has taken root all over the globe in a way that maybe other genres of, other forms of music haven't, because there's this underlying cultural backbone that makes it more accessible. And I really also I want to double down on your point about there being different cultural touchstones, different artistic touchstones in the culture, where if you're more into dance and movement, you're more into visual art with graffiti, there are various areas to get in where you fit in. And there's such a need for more research and more practice in those areas, that hopefully this can kind of serve a bit as a call of action, for practitioners who are experts in those other areas to consider those approaches, or individuals in the hip hop community who maybe aren't educators or therapists to maybe consider what would, working in that industry, how could I make that unique in my own way and bring my personal and communal strengths to the table?